Hey everybody, welcome to the Angst Podcast. You are listening to episode number 20 of the series. My name is Jericho and I am your host. For today's discussion, I wanted to kick this one off just by telling you guys a couple of stories in regards to some events that have happened to me over the last couple of months. We're going to be exploring some concepts such as individualistic freedom, online security and digital privacy, as well as big corporate data and some issues I think our society might be about to face, especially as we continue to develop and implement new technologies into our lives. And so for these stories, I'm actually going to take you guys back approximately a year and a half when I became interested in cryptocurrency. I purchased a little bit of Bitcoin as well as other digital online tokens and digital assets. I got myself a physical hardware wallet to store these tokens, and I opened up several digital cryptocurrency exchange accounts. At the same time, I became very intrigued into some ideas like trade analysis, blockchain technology as a whole, and the decentralization of money and what that could look like for our society going forward. And I really want to stress in no way, shape, or form was I an expert in this field. Like, this was definitely uncharted waters for myself. Crypto was gaining a little bit of hype. I felt like if there was any possibility that it might show a little utility or capabilities in our society, I didn't want to be the last guy off the starting line. I wanted to have a little bit of Bitcoin saved up. I wanted to have a little bit prior knowledge of how the technology worked and what that digital space looked like, just in case this was something that actually caught on and gave a good rate of return. And so as I continued to navigate through the space, I actually became a little bit paranoid. And the reason being is it's kind of like the wild, wild west of finance out there. It's not regulated in the same way that traditional financial markets would be. And you're not dealing with corporations that have the same customer service departments or rapport you would expect to see from like an investment firm or a bank of some kind. It's the wild, wild west. These exchanges are being set up all over the globe. You don't necessarily know the companies or the individuals that are behind them. And they're dealing with their own laws and their own regulations that are not necessarily, Canadian or in regards to where I live. And so I became really concerned that I was going to make a mistake and get taken advantage of. Maybe I would send my tokens to the wrong address. Maybe I would open an account on an exchange that proved to be malicious and nothing but an exit scam strategy, and they were just going to close all my accounts, steal all my tokens, and run away. I'd never hear from them again. I wasn't really sure what was going to happen, but I determined that I needed to ramp up my digital security and my online security. My solution was that I was going to change all of my passwords because I was really only utilizing a couple of passwords, and if somebody got into my email account, I felt like they could then use that to reset my cryptocurrency exchange passwords. They could likely get into my social media accounts using my email. They could probably even get into my traditional bank account using my email, and that wasn't good. I needed to ramp up that security. And so my solution was I was going to create a unique password, a completely randomized series of characters, letters, and numbers that had nothing to do with me and wasn't used for anything else except for Gmail. I actually did the same thing for the cryptocurrency accounts. I came up with unique passwords for all of those, unique passwords for my social media, unique passwords for my bank. And so if a hacker or an individual got access to one of these passwords, they couldn't then use that to open the floodgates of my entire digital persona. And when I started talking about this concept and this paranoia with my friends and my peers, I actually realized that this really wasn't a common practice. I think for the average individual around, especially the average older individual, I think they're probably using at max 3 passwords, if not more likely 2 or maybe even 1. And for some more moronic individuals walking around, this password might actually even be something that's actually relatable to them in some way, shape, or form. It might be their maiden name, the name of a child, their birthday or birth year, something that could be easily guessed or traced back for somebody that was persistent. And so that's first thing I want to get across in this podcast, guys, is that needs to change. We're moving in a direction where people need to be more concerned about their online security. They need to be utilizing more passwords. And let me tell you why. Is because in the following months after this cryptocurrency hype, I actually received a very interesting and threatening email. In the subject line of this email was an 8-character password that belonged to me. Albeit it was now outdated due to my cryptocurrency craze. I had updated all of these passwords, but it was a password that I had utilized during my teen years for several websites online. And then in the body or the text of this email was actually a threat. Essentially, these hackers had claimed that they had gotten access to my account, they knew my password, they had access to my social media and all of my contacts. They also knew that I had been frequenting adult pornography sites. They had hacked into my computer's camera and actually recorded me masturbating to some of these videos. And if I didn't send them, I think it was like $7,000 in 24 hours. They were going to blackmail me by sending this video to all of my contacts, all of my friends, my coworkers, my boss, everybody I knew, and essentially try to extort me. And so I'm not going to lie, guys, for the first couple of moments as I'm reading this email, my heart is just starting to pound because, first of all, they do have a password of mine. Yes, it's outdated, but they quite clearly have hacked into one of my accounts or gained a password. And second of all, I'm also willing to admit I have watched pornography videos. That video could, in theory, exist somewhere. Thank goodness it didn't. This is a phishing email, and it's nothing more than a scam, which after I calmed down, took some breaths, and did a little research, I realized there was a couple holes in some claims that they had made about myself, and it's an outdated password. They don't have access to any of my social media and my contacts because they're talking about a password I haven't been using for about a year now. And so I calmed down, I deleted the email, I blocked the sender. But this is going to be something that I think isn't just going to be unique for myself. Like, this is going to be a problem that we're going to have going forward. And one of the issues is that technology is starting to get older, and as we continue to get better and develop new software, this old, outdated tech is going to be more easily accessible by hackers or people that give a fuck. And so let me give you another camera example. Let's say hypothetically, like I'm using a webcam to record this podcast right now. Let's say hypothetically I had a series of webcams set up throughout my house so I can monitor my dogs or my baby or just security while I'm on vacation, make sure everything's okay. And let's say I had all of these cameras set up and somebody decided that they were going to hack into this device in some way, shape, or form. This technology isn't necessarily going to come with a super advanced firewall or security parameters, because why would it have to? It's not a phone or a computer. It doesn't have the same reputation or expectation to store private information. It's just a cheap little webcam made from China that you potentially got at fucking Walmart or online from who knows where. And yeah, maybe it has a little bit of a low security parameter to it. And so if somebody wanted to gain access to this webcam, I mean, could they? Especially as technologies and hackers get better and continue to improve. I mean, maybe they gain access to your webcams. Now they're inside your house, which is already kind of a creepy thought, just them watching you. But maybe they could use that information to take advantage. Maybe they could see your schedules, the type of technology or valuables that you have in your house, where they're kept, and whether you're home or not. And they could eventually rob you or take advantage of you in some way, shape, or form. I mean, I think this is something that we're going to see become common practice in the following years, and it's concerning. I think people need to be very well aware of their digital security and their online personas. These are more individualistic concepts, but we could even go a little bit more large scale. We could go to like a corporate or a government style concept. I think it was only about maybe a year, just over a year ago, the Equifax breach. I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but I would like to just remind you, there was a credit agency in the United States called Equifax that actually got breached and hacked into, and essentially 145 million, I think was one of the final numbers, social insurance numbers, driver's license numbers, not bank accounts, sorry, but like birthdays and personal addresses and phone numbers and all of this unique and private and valuable information, things that could easily be taken advantage of or used for some type of identity theft, was just stolen. 140, like half of America, just their reputation, their online personas, their personal account numbers, just taken advantage of. And this is supposed to be a company that in theory should be paying attention to their digital privacy and their firewalls and their security. So, I mean, I don't know if that's expedience. I don't know what happened exactly in the back burner of that area. I mean, they probably don't care. And what's the repercussions for this company? I mean, a lot of people's information was lost due to no fault of their own. It was up to this credit agency to be the ones responsible to amp up the passwords, to keep the firewalls high, to update their tech. But I mean, they got taken advantage of. Another example that I could utilize would be this one's not even a hacker. This is just information getting sold. Is a few months ago, we actually had Mastercard sell their credit card statements of their customers to Google. The reason being is Google is an ad-based company. Yes, they're a search engine, but one of their other major contributing factors to the world and to the internet is they're an ad service. And so what they typically do is they display ads, they gather information from their consumers and from their clients, and then they display personalized ads for you. And so if you are looking up a product and you want to buy it, then they're going to try to entice you that says, okay, so-and-so has been been to these websites, he's been talking about this product, he's been searching this up on social media, let's try to entice them or give them some advertisements of some way, shape, or form. So Google then knows if you click on the ad and you purchase the device, that it worked. The ad worked. We took this information, we were able to sell to you, and that's good data for them that they can give back to the companies and anybody else that wants to display advertisements. But often what they don't know is that if Google is constantly showing you an ad and then you walk into a store and you purchase it in person, Google doesn't really know if the ad worked the same way. If you go through the online services, if you purchase it through Amazon, well, then we know here is the correlation and the link and everything. But if you saw that advertisement and then use that information to buy in person, Google can't necessarily track that. And so what did they do? Well, they teamed up with Mastercard and they actually purchased private customers' credit card statements from Mastercard so they could attempt to essentially correlate their online advertisements to their in-store purchases. And I just really need to stress that, like, this is essentially illegal. Like, this is not information that Mastercard should be able to distribute. My credit card purchasing history shouldn't be given to Google. I never gave them access to that information. It should be stored specifically to Mastercard. But there's this weird little gray area, right? Because who the fuck cares? They can get away with stuff like this because all that happens is that we read about it in a news article one day, and it's a concerning moment for Jericho for about 5 minutes, and then there's nothing I can do about it. I need to move on with my life. And so this isn't even a malicious hacker. This is just two companies doing business and sharing information that I never technically gave permission to be shared. And so what's the liability here for this? Like, let's say hypothetically, I went to a bank and I had a lockbox of some kind, and I put all of my valuables inside this lockbox. And let's say I kept it there for a year, and then all of a sudden I realize that the bank gets breached, broken into, and my security box or my private box gets stolen. Is there a liability clause for the bank that to replace my valuables? Are they not liable for that? I gave them all of this content, and they said that they would store it safely for me, and now it's gone, and I feel like they should be liable in some way, shape, or form. And I mean, is the same liability exist online and from digital personal information? If I store all of my data on this website and they get breached or hacked or it gets stolen in some way, shape, or form, I mean, are they going to give that back, or what repercussions do these companies have, and what are they liable to me as their consumer, somebody that was under the impression they were going to correctly take the right security parameters to store my shit? Whether it's physical shit or digital shit, it really shouldn't matter. Just a little bit, something that came into my head that was a little bit randomized, but kind of pissed me off since we're talking about the Google advertisements thing. The other day, we're coming up to Christmas. It's almost December, and I've been doing a little bit of Christmas shopping and a little bit of research, and I've actually purchased a gift for my girlfriend, so my Christmas shopping is done. Go Jericho. But the other day, I'm actually scrolling through a website, and I need to show my girlfriend something, and so I'm scrolling through, showing her, and what pops up on the middle of the screen? Her goddamn Christmas gift idea. Like one of the ideas that I had been looking at and researching before just pops up as an advertisement that she gets to see. And it's not something that I would have necessarily bought for myself. And so I had this moment where I'm like, oh fuck, maybe Google just literally ruined my Christmas gift idea, which is super embarrassing. And I hope that this doesn't jog her memory listening to this podcast right now, but it was just a very interesting point about privacy and just something that's not even malicious or that evil looking that potentially took away something that would have been private in the past, such as a Christmas gift or a surprise of some kind. And so I think going forward, it's a very interesting state that we find ourselves in, because should we, from an individualistic standpoint, from this hacking passwords and camera monitors and everything in your house, I mean, that's kind of up to you to be secure and paying attention and making sure you're taking all the necessary steps. But with this big data and these other companies that are potentially liable as well, I mean, you only have so much control over these institutions. And so, I mean, going forward, what is it going to look like? Could I potentially pay to have some type of ramped up digital security or extra online security? In my house, if I had a break-in or a breach of some kind, I could in theory have an alarm or a security company that would contact me and say, hey, there was a breach, we're sending somebody over, we're going to make sure that you're okay. They're essentially helping monitor my safety and security. Could there be a digital online equivalent that comes into place? And if my information was breached or taken advantage of, I would get a warning, or a company would be looking out for me. They would be protecting or encrypting my digital online information. Maybe it actually just becomes an inherent feature of the websites. Maybe to utilize something like Facebook, for example, and they're absorbing all of this information, taking all this data. What if Facebook now offers a premium account? And so you could actually just pay to not have any of that information taken. And so if you pay $10 a month, now you have a private Facebook account. It comes with a couple other features, and we won't sell any of your information to advertisers. You won't get any advertisements on the screen, and it's 100% secure. All of your information is yours. It's not owned by us. It's not being sold to anybody else. I mean, is that an inherent feature that should be built into the system? Is that not something I should just already have for free just by signing up? Or is that something that is a paid feature? Is that up to the company to decide, well, okay, no, we're going to use all your information, sell it to advertisers unless you pay us extra? What if hypothetically, let's say that there was some dirt out there on the internet, like a video of that I didn't want? Could I potentially hire some digitalized content hitman and pay him or her to actually go out onto the interwebs and destroy all of this information, to get rid of those videos, to get rid of those passwords, to basically delete all of this data that has been stored and encoded on the interwebs for me? I mean, I don't know. It sounds like a crazy idea. It kind of feels like once something's out onto the internet, there's no way to get it back. But what if that was a service somebody could provide for you? What if there was somebody that was willing for day and night to scour the internet, finding information about yourself and erasing it, and essentially destroying your digital persona or information that you didn't want leaking out there? If you were a politician, I mean, this would seem like a very valuable person to have. The Kavanaugh case only too long ago. What if I could hypothetically have gotten rid of any details or information about an event that occurred years before, and now I'm running for political office or some type of position of power, and I've had this person eradicate all of this prior information that would have been out there? I mean, that seems like a really valuable job if you were good at it and you were capable of those things. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of just spitballing ideas. The interesting thing is that it seems like it's kind of a a give take right now. Is if you want to put something onto the internet, if you want to use technology in some way, shape, or form, okay, well then you're giving up a little bit of privacy and freedom. And I mean, it's a little ironic that I'm recording this podcast right now as well, because I'm essentially regurgitating all of this information about myself onto the interwebs to be taken advantage of whoever wants to take advantage of it. But as we continue to go forward, I want to know, is there going to be a scenario in which you can lie and you could suppress this information, or you could keep it private? I mean, let's say hypothetically new technology became implemented in the medical field, and this was a chip or a heart rate monitor or something that could be put into your body, and it was actually going to record your vital signs and your blood pressure, and it could see potentially if there was a virus in your system, or if that cancer cell was starting to grow. I mean, picture whatever incredible medical breakthrough you need to, but let's say it could be implemented and we could actually give you data before shit got bad, before you even realized it was happening. I mean, that would be really valuable. That would be valuable data to have, right? But what if there was actually some malpractice associated with this? So let's say hypothetically you are an insured citizen of the United States, and you have this monitor in you because you want to maintain health and make sure that you're doing okay and that your vitals are all good and nothing's going wrong. But let's say that we actually found out that you had a predisposition to have a heart attack or have heart disease. Are you technically a liability from an insurance standpoint? If there was a monitor inside your body, is that information something that could discredit you from being insured? Would you have to pay extra to be insured as opposed to somebody that comes back with completely healthy vital signs? I don't know, like that's kind of an interesting area. And then to say, well, that's up to the individual. If you don't want to put the monitor in, you don't have to put the monitor in. But it's like, well, then I'm not getting the same advantages as other individuals of society. If somebody could have a heart rate monitor that told them they were going to have a heart attack before it happened, that seems like a really interesting tool. But if I put that monitor in me and it comes back to say that I have a predisposition to have a bad heart and now I'm uninsurable, I mean, that's a dangerous game that we're playing, right? And we could do this with a bunch of different health concerns. Like let's say, hypothetically, I had these monitors in me and all of my vitals were starting to take a little turn for the worse. And then my doctor actually found out that I was a smoker, for example. Why? Because they have all of my credit card information from Mastercard and from Google, and everything's all compiled into this online digital identity that I have. And so they know, hey, your vitals aren't necessarily the best. Also, we know that you've been purchasing and smoking cigarettes. If you do not stop that, we will not give you healthcare coverage. Because you're making a very conscious decision here to fuck up your own heart. So you're essentially a liability. It's like reckless driving. We already have the same equivalent in the automotive insurance world. You could install right now a monitor into your vehicle that actually monitors your speed. And this will save you a premium. You will pay less. If you're willing to implement this monitor to prove to us that you were driving safely, you will save money on your car insurance. I don't have that monitor in my car. Why? Because I occasionally like to speed. I don't want to be under the wheel of Big Brother that's watching me all the time and making sure I'm constantly going the speed limit. If I'm a little late, I won't lie, I have sped in the past. I do like to take advantage of that. So much so, I don't even want to receive a discount on my car insurance. So it's kind of a choice. But when it's something as valuable as health, not speed, is it a choice? I mean, are you going to make the conscious decision to not have insurance in some way, shape, or form just because you don't want to have a monitor in you? Or like, I feel like everybody's going to try to have the least expensive policy as possible. And then do they now have the ability to make lifestyle choices for you? Like the cigarette one is pretty easy and obvious, but what about food and diet? What if the same monitors or vitals were coming back as piss poor and we realized that your purchase history was nothing but red meats and processed food and fast food and all of these things that maybe aren't necessarily good for you? Do we have the ability to say you're uninsurable because you're not eating a certain way? Is that fair? Is that not private information? Should I not have the ability to eat kind of whatever I want? I don't know. From a health and insurance perspective, it would seem like maybe that's not the case. I think we're going into a really interesting direction in the world where all of this data is going to actually keep you accountable to certain institutions, to your boss, to your companies, to your insurance providers. And I mean, what are they allowed to have and what society do you want to live in? You could easily say, well, don't give them this information, but then you're not staying up to date with the same resources and technologies and capabilities and access to information and potential new possibilities that everybody else in our society is going to have. And so I think it's a really interesting direction that we're going. And it's even worse, guys, because if you think you're scared as an individual, I wouldn't be as much as big governments or big corporations should be scared. We already talked about the Equifax thing, but let's say hypothetically the government has all of this information, the United States government has all of this data, and let's say somebody like Big Brother Russia or China got access to this information. What if they hacked into the security parameters set up by the United States government or set up by Tesla or Google or Apple? What kind of information could they steal from them? What security parameters are these individuals and these corporations and these institutions having to implement? Obviously, a lot bigger and stronger firewalls than the individual, right? And so we should be scared even from like a government and a corporate perspective of what information could potentially be taken advantage of and put into the wrong hands or other institutions or countries across the globe. I mean, I'm in no way, shape, or form an expert. I don't even really want to get into the topic too much, but something like quantum computing is kind of a scary idea. If you guys do want to learn a little bit more, I highly recommend watching a video or a podcast about it. I can put a link in the description for a pretty good one for you guys. But quantum computing, essentially the short and sweet, my understanding, is it's the ability to run processes at an accelerated rate. So instead of only having certain options like a 1 or a 0, and you can only have so many in a sequence, you could actually in a quantum computer have a 1 and a 0 essentially exist at the same time. And again, I don't want to get too big into the concept, but what that would allow you to do is run a series of processes a lot faster and a lot more volume than a traditional computing method. And so if you were trying to hack a password or take advantage of a system, it would take you potentially, you'd have to go for thousands of days of trying different different numbers and different characters and different letters and trying all these different inputs into the system, and over and over and over. It could take weeks to months to years. In a quantum computer, it could run the same process in a fraction of the time. And so it would allow hackers or individuals to get into these technologies or break into the systems a lot quicker and more efficiently. And I mean, this has to be a concern from a government and the finance or a large institution perspective, right? Because if China, for example, got access to quantum computing and they were able to compute things at a rate infinitely faster than that of the United States or Canada or North America, then in theory, they could get into some of our technology or past some of our security parameters that we never expected. And so I think this is just a very interesting and very uncharted territory that we're heading into. I don't think we know exactly what the future of online privacy and digital security looks like, and it's kind of concerning. Usually when I end these podcasts, what I like to do is kind of, if I'm going to talk shit and I'm going to have all these kind of dark and disturbing concepts and these freaky ideas, I usually like to finish it with something a little bit more uphhearted or a solution in some way, shape, or form. But for this one, I'm going to be honest, I'm not really sure what the solution is. My only advice I can give to you guys is that you just won't want to be the lowest common denominator or the slowest individual. If I was in a group of people and we started to get chased by a bear, the only thing that I have to do to survive is I just have to be not the slowest guy. I don't need to be the fastest guy. I just need to be not the slowest, because the bear is going to catch the slowest individual, right? And I kind of feel like the online persona and the digital security is the same. It's not something that we have complete control over. Privacy definitely is diminishing, at least in my opinion, and I think this is going to be a common trend that we see and maybe we can't even escape. But just don't be the slowest guy getting chased down. Don't be the individual that's using one password for every online account that's easily traceable to yourself, right? Like, don't put yourself in opportunities where you're potentially masturbating in front of cameras or that you could get taken advantage of your home. Don't leave your door unlocked. Don't leave your computer in certain places. Have a password on your phone. I mean, again, I would love to provide you guys with this big epic solution to be like, here's the problem. But I would say just be cognizant. As technology continues to develop, as new ideas get put into the system, and as we start to interact with these industries, pay attention as to what you can do to be secure and safe and be as in control of your information as possible. So anyways, guys, I hope you really enjoyed that podcast. Thanks for listening today, and we will see you around.